Good morning, first grade. Today, we're going to start a spooky Halloween picture. Now, some things that you need to know before we even get started. Number one, I'm going to draw this with a Sharpie marker. I want you to stick with pencils. Typically, and you should remember this from last year when you're in kindergarten, if I had you, pencils and these document cameras don't really work well together. They come up looking very, very light. So I'm going to be using a Sharpie marker the entire time. Stick with pencils, please. There's going to be two different parts of this video. The first part is going to be us drawing, okay? And then there's going to be a second completely different video dedicated to how we're going to trace this picture. When we get to the tracing part, you're going to need to have either oil pastels, which I prefer to use, or crayons. Crayons will work just as well as oil pastels. I like oil pastels because they're a little more vibrant. That means they're a little bit brighter. But we're going to get into that in the second video. Anyways, in front of me, I have a piece of watercolor paper. Okay, so watercolor paper does a few things for us. Number one, it's a little thicker than normal drawing paper. It's meant to absorb water and not change shape. It's not going to rip or wrinkle when we go to paint this next week. Okay. This is going to be our first watercolor painting project, and I do want everybody to kind of hold off and wait for me to paint. Painting is an exciting day in our art classes, but I want to show you a couple of tips and tricks. So please, 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 if you have horses, hold them to next week. Hold your horses on the painting part. We'll do that all together next week. Okay, so I'm holding my piece of watercolor paper going left and right. We call this a landscape. If I were going to hold it going up and down, we're holding this like a portrait, but we don't really need to see the portrait version for this. This year in first grade, we're going to make a spooky spider web. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of frame our picture by adding two tree branches that come down. And on the inside, we're going to draw our spider web. We're probably going to draw a moon, so we're going to need a tracer of some kind, a circle tracer. So I've got my Bernardsville Farm & Cup, good old tracer. And then we'll get into the tracing with the oil pastels in our next video. So let's get started. Okay. Please remember, I've been saying it and saying it and saying it. If I'm going too fast for you, hit pause. That's the beauty of these videos. You'd always hit pause, and when you're caught up, then you could hit play again and see what the next couple of steps are. Just like in my normal classes, I tend to draw a little slowly on our whiteboard or with our document camera so that you can take your time and do it correctly. I don't want anybody rushing through anything. There's no point in rushing. You want to take your time and do these projects correctly. Okay, so we're going to start with one of my favorite letters, and that's going to be the letter V. We're going to put a letter V, that's a big V, by the way, in both upper corners of our paper. Then we're going to turn these V's into branches. It's going to actually end up looking like the letter Y. So I'm going to start out here, and I'm going to make this kind of curve in and then back out like that. It kind of bows. On the inside of that branch, we're going to trace it and follow that one down. Now, my branch is now almost as wide as my finger. This is going to allow me to trace with an oil pastel and then paint on the inside. If they're really, really skinny, remember, oil pastels are big, okay? We want to draw big. Here is my oil pastel that I'm going to use. Here is my Sharpie tip. If I was using a pencil, which you are, the pencil tip is even smaller than a Sharpie. Okay, so we got to make sure that we're drawing big for this. We're going to repeat this process on this side. So we're going to come in, draw one line that comes down, Draw the other one that comes in and follows it down. Okay. Now we have 2 tree branches, and we're going to put our spider web in between. Okay. The first things that I want to do for my spider web is I'm going to draw the top of the web and the bottom of the web. I'm going to just draw it like this. Nice curve going down like that. I'm going to kind of invert that. That means to flip it upside down. Okay. Now I'm going to draw the sides of my spider web. So I'm going to go from here all the way down to down here. I'm going to repeat that process on this side. I'm going to start up here. Go all the way down there. Now it's time to draw the spider web in that shape. We're going to start with one of my other favorite letters. So we've used the letter V, we've used the letter Y. Now we're going to use a letter X. Okay, so our X is going to go from here all the way down to this corner and then on the other side as well. Everybody see that X? Good. Now we're going to use a lowercase t. The t is going to go right down in the middle, and it's going to set us up for a nice spider web. Now, if your X or your T do not line up in the middle, that's perfectly fine. If you want to leave it that way, I'm totally for it. Spider webs always look different. Okay, none of them are perfect and none of them look exactly the same. They're almost like snowflakes. If you want to take the time and fix it, that's fine as well. Now this next part, we're going to be adding the letter U or letter C, it depends on how you look at it, in each of these little slices. We're only going to add 2, maybe 3 U's or C's to each slice. And as I do this, I'm going to turn my paper. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go around this way clockwise. Okay. So I'm going to start, and I want these to be spaced out because remember, we're going to be painting next week and our paintbrushes might be a little tricky for us to control. So we want to have large areas to paint in. So there's a U shape and there's a U shape. That's perfect. 1, 2, 3 pieces. That's all I need there. I'm going to slowly turn my paper so I'm drawing the same shape here. To get this to look a little bit neater, I'm going to have these U shapes begin where the other one ended. See how I did that? I'm going to turn my paper again. I'm going to repeat this going all the way around. So I'm going to begin and kind of end all in the same spot. Remember, if I go too quickly, you should pause the video. Now, these last 2 parts can be kind of tricky, okay? Because you want to make sure that everything kind of lines up, but if it doesn't, that's okay. Mine doesn't exactly line up, it's a little bit different. Am I worried about it? Nope. Boom. You just made yourself an awesome looking spider web. Now let's add some things to the background. Last year in kindergarten, if I had you, we learned how to draw a very, very simple ghost. So we're going to add these ghosts back. If you've forgotten, I'm going to put one over here Maybe I'll put one over there. We'll see how I feel. Maybe I'll put a spider on that side. So we'll do a ghost over here, spider over there. Perfect. The way that I like to do my ghosts, they kind of look like they're from the greatest video game of all time, Pac-Man. Start with a lowercase n minus the line, or an upside down U, depending on how you look at it. And then I'm going to have a wavy bottom that goes from one side to the other. Remember, we want these waves to be kind of big because you're going to have to trace those with oil pastels. I'll add my eyes. And a mouth. Boom. That looks great. Over here, I'm going to add a spider. It's going to be a very simple spider. Okay, so let's have the line come down, the spider web come down. I'm going to have an oval shape. Spiders have 8 legs, so we have to put 4 on one side and 4 on the other. But look, I've got an issue. My spider legs on this side are going to be going off the paper. Okay? I'm perfectly fine with that. It makes it look like this is just a snapshot of what we're seeing. Okay, we're not seeing everything in our picture. That's A-okay. So I'm going to have my spider legs kind of just look like this. 3, 4. Kind of look like big number 7s. I'm drawing off my paper. Okay with that. You give it some eyes. I'm going to give it some kind of like triangle-ish eyes, just like that. That's cool. If you want to do just little dots, or if you want to add teeth or a mouth or a smile, go for it. Okay, now once we have this set up, we have to trace our moon. Now the placing of our moon is going to be kind of interesting because it's going to play a big factor in how we paint our picture. We want this, when we go to paint, to look visually interesting. So instead of putting our moon like up here, where it's kind of unaffected by anything, we're going to put our moon in our spider web a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take my cup. This is a big old cup. I'm going to put it up here. Okay, so when I put it here, part of it's going to be outside, but most of it's going to be inside. Okay, I'm going to trace my picture. Remember to hold your cup down with your free hand or whatever you're using. If you need help, ask for help. And I've got my moon. Okay. Now, we are all done drawing our spooky spiderweb picture. Get out of here, you. If you need to go back and fix anything that you don't necessarily like, that's fine. You could go back and fix it. In the next video, our next video is going to be all about how to trace our picture that we drew. When you see the next video, it's not going to be drawn in Sharpie. It's going to be drawn in pencil so I can show you how the colors are going to work. If I traced over my Sharpie picture with oil pastels, it's not going to work very well. It's going to be rather difficult to see because Sharpie markers are so dark. Okay, so for the next portion of our project, if you have oil pastels, please grab them. If you don't, if you have crayons, please grab those. We need a bunch of different colors. Got it? Okay, I'll see you in a few minutes.